After a very long wait, 4 turtles and a baby has finally arrived. I must admit, ever since this movie was announced, I was very, very hyped. I actually used to say to my friends all the time that I think the one property that could use the Spider-Verse treatment was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And as if Seth Rogen was right outside my door, it's actually here. Mutant Mayhem is directed by Jeff Lowe and was a really, really fun time. I thought Mutant Mayhem has something for both new and old Ninja Turtle fans. My girlfriend had never seen anything Ninja Turtle related, and she still had a pretty good time with this. My biggest word of caution about this movie is that it is a very different version of the Ninja Turtles than you might be used to. The Turtles are a lot younger feeling than they traditionally are, being voiced by actual teenagers for the first time, which is a change that I really enjoyed. I think they moved and felt a lot like actual teenage brothers. They also aged April down, which isn't a new change. They've done that in a couple of the series, but I think it works pretty well, and I'm actually a fan of that change in most incarnations. But the biggest change to traditional turtle lore has to be Splinter. He's less of like an old wise master and more of just like a goofy, silly dad. And I didn't necessarily mind the change, but I do prefer when Splinter's presence has a little more gravitas to it. But I did love the 4 turtles themselves. I thought they were really fun, and I enjoyed every time they were on screen. Donatello is my favorite turtle, and he usually in the movies gets a bit of the short end of the stick and gets pushed to the side. But here he has actually a very considerable amount of screen time. And Leo, on the other hand, is actually usually my least favorite turtle, but in this movie he's really charming, and I enjoyed him quite a lot. I was surprised that Raphael actually had a pretty low amount of screen time, mainly because the movies usually make it the Raphael show since he's like the fan favorite. But in this movie he's kind of, he doesn't have no screen time, but he is maybe the turtle with the least amount. I love the designs of the turtles themselves too. They did a happy medium between like the heavily stylized like Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles type or just the ones where they all look homogenous. I think they picked a happy medium where like Raph is the biggest one and Mikey is shortest and Donatello is tall and has glasses, but they all still look like turtles. I thought that looked really good. And then the animation is of course really, really pretty. Comparisons are going to be made to Spider-Verse. Obviously I made one at the beginning of this video, but I think it still has its own style. It's very grungy, very grounded looking. The human designs are kind of gross. The mutants look gross too. It all kind of has this hand-drawn feeling where it looks as though it was drawn by a kid, which I thought worked really, really well for the turtles. Also, the biggest surprise is that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the soundtrack for this movie. I'm a huge Social Network fan, and you could definitely hear like some of that in the background during the score at some parts, and I thought it was really good and worked a lot for the most part. I was just kind of surprised that they did something like this, but I'm glad they did. The few gripes I have are pretty minor, but I do feel like most of the villains, aside from Superfly, kind of got pushed to the side, and maybe there were just a few too many. I would have liked if the movie maybe focused up on a couple of them and cut some of the other ones. Like Bebop and Rocksteady are in this, but they were kind of off to the side, and they didn't really have that much screen time of their own, which isn't a huge deal because they're not the focus of the movie. I did think Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko was very funny. He probably had the most laughs out of me in the entire movie. And just the movie as a whole is really funny. Donatello says he's getting mollywopped at one point. And they really just talk like teenagers. They use words like Riz, which I think works really well. I think some people are going to think that that's going to date the movie, which it is. But that's kind of in a good way because I don't think the Turtles have ever shied away from doing that. I mean, the 80s were full of 80s slang with the Turtles, so I think it's just they're doing that. But for this time, and I think that'll make younger audiences latch onto it a little more quickly. There was a point where I felt like the pop culture references were getting a little much, and I wish they would have pulled back in some instances. And the action was really fun too. I don't think there was necessarily a crazy scene where I was like, whoa, how did they do that? But there were like really fun and inventive sequences that they did with the Turtles that I really enjoyed. So if you're on the fence about seeing the Ninja Turtle movie, I say go see it. If not for you, go see it for me, because I would love to see a sequel for this, and hopefully it does really well, because I think there's a lot of potential. The cinematic history of the Turtles has been interesting, to say the least. I think this might be the first great Turtle movie. We've had some decent ones in there, but I think this is the first one that I will probably rewatch considerably. If you're interested in knowing my more in-depth thoughts on those other turtle movies, you will just have to wait and see.